A 6-year-old girl lay half buried beneath the snow, her thin body trembling, her small hands clutching a ragged teddy bear with one eye missing. Her lips were blue, her hair matted against her cheeks, and her wide brown eyes glistened with silent tears. She had been thrown out of the house in the middle of the blizzard, left to freeze by the very man who called himself her guardian. The only thing keeping her tethered to the world was the stuffed bear she hugged to her chest, the last gift from her real father before he disappeared. The wind howled across the empty fields, whipping through the abandoned sheds and frozen trees. Snowflakes stung her face like needles. Her small chest rose and fell in ragged gasps, each breath shallower than the last, her whispers scattered with the storm. They told me I shouldn't exist. The words vanished into the blizzard. No one should have heard them, but someone did. A weary soldier trudged through the snow, his boots sinking deep into the drifts. His camouflage uniform, though thick, could not hide the limp in his gait. His face was marked by scars, and his eyes carried shadows far darker than the storm. Beside him padded a German shepherd, a canine with sharp eyes and ears that never rested. The bond between man and dog was wordless but unbreakable. They had saved each other too many times to count. The soldier, Daniel Cross, froze as Shadow the canine stiffened. The dog's ears pricked, head turning toward the broken fence ahead. A sound carried faintly through the blizzard, soft, fragile, like a thread, pulling them forward. A child's cry. Daniel's chest tightened. He'd heard cries like that before, in war zones, beneath rubble, where innocence was buried under chaos. His boots pounded the snow as he followed Shadow's lead. There, near the shattered fence, lay the girl. Her body nearly swallowed by snowdrifts, her small face pale as death. Daniel's breath caught. Without hesitation, he dropped to his knees, brushing snow from her body with trembling hands. The child's eyes fluttered open. She flinched at his touch, clutching the teddy bear tighter. "No, don't take it away," she whispered, her voice hoarse. Daniel's heart cracked. "Easy, sweetheart." "I'm not here to take it. I'm here to help," Shadow whined softly, lowering his head close to the girl. The dog licked her frozen fingers gently as though promising safety. The girl's wide eyes softened a fraction at the touch, her tiny hand drifting toward Shadow's fur. Daniel wrapped his coat around her fragile frame, lifting her carefully into his arms. She was light, too light, like a bundle of sticks. The warmth of his body seemed to shock her. She buried her face against his chest, muffling a sob. "Who did this to you?" Daniel muttered, though part of him already knew. The bruises on her wrist, the way she flinched at sudden movement, he'd seen it before, in children abandoned by war. But this wasn't a battlefield. This was supposed to be home. The storm intensified, the snow swirling around them like a curtain. Daniel glanced toward the distant lights of the town. He knew the people there. He knew their silence, their complicity. If they had turned away once, they would turn away again. Shadow barked sharply, his body tense. Figures moved in the distance, shadows of men, voices carried faintly on the wind. "Check over there!" Daniel's jaw tightened. Whoever had left her to die wasn't finished. He adjusted his grip on the child, his other hand instinctively brushing the rifle slung across his back. His pulse quickened. The girl stirred, her lips close to his ear. "Please!" Her whisper broke like glass. "Don't send me back!" Daniel froze. The storm roared around them, but her plea cut sharper than any blade. Shadow growled low, snow scattering as he planted himself between Daniel and the approaching shapes. The soldier's chest ached, his mind flashing back to a memory, another child's cry in another ruin, one he hadn't been able to save. His hands shook, the weight of the past crushing him. But this time was different. This time he had a choice. Daniel pulled the girl tighter against him, her heartbeat fluttering like a trapped bird. He whispered back, his voice steady despite the storm. "You're not going back. Not ever. The men drew closer. The storm shrieked louder. Shadow bared his teeth, his growl rumbling like thunder in the snow. Daniel's scarred hand tightened on his rifle. He could feel the girl trembling against him, the teddy bear crushed between them. And then, beneath the howl of the wind, came her broken whisper again, words so small and fragile they nearly vanished into the storm. "They told me I shouldn't exist." Daniel's breath caught. Rage and sorrow ignited inside him, burning hotter than the cold could ever reach. His past had taught him that some battles couldn't be won. But tonight, with this child in his arms, he swore that this one would be different. The storm raged, the shadows closed in, and the soldier, the child, and the dog braced for the fight that would change everything. The hospital's fluorescent lights buzzed faintly, casting a sterile glow on the cracked linoleum floors. Daniel carried the girl through the doors, his breath still misting from the cold, Shadow trotting at his heels. The warmth of the building did little to thaw the ice that had seeped into the girl's bones. She clung to him, her ragged teddy bear pressed between them, eyes wide with distrust. A nurse looked up from the counter. Her expression flickered, first alarm at the sight of the frostbitten child, then hesitation. She reached for the phone as if to call someone, then stopped. Her eyes darted to Daniel's scars, to the uniform that no longer belonged to an active soldier. "She needs help," Daniel said gruffly. His voice carried an edge, more command than request. The nurse rose slowly, muttering, "Of course. I'll get Dr. Warren." She disappeared down the hall. Daniel lowered himself onto a waiting bench, holding the girl carefully. Shadow sat at his feet, body taut, ears swiveling at every sound. The child buried her face into Daniel's chest, refusing to let go, even as he tried to ease her into the blanket Clara, the social worker, soon brought. Clara appeared minutes later, her wool coat dusted with snow. She was in her 30s, kind eyes behind tired glasses. She crouched before the girl, voice gentle. "Sweetheart, you're safe now. My name's Clara, can you tell me yours?" The girl only shook her head. Her lips trembled, her eyes dropping to the teddy bear as if it could answer for her. Daniel interjected quietly. She was left out there, buried. If we'd been 10 minutes later, he couldn't finish, his throat closed around the words. Clara's gaze softened with pity, then hardened with anger. "I've seen this before." Too many times she glanced around, lowering her voice. "If Victor Hale had a hand in this—" The girl flinched at the name. Her small fingers dug into Daniel's sleeve. Clara sighed. "Then it's worse than I thought." Dr. Warren arrived, a man in his 50s with gentle hands but eyes that avoided too much truth. He examined the child carefully, noting the bruises on her wrists, the raw red marks on her ankles. His jaw tightened, but he only said, "She'll need warmth, fluids, rest." "She's lucky." Daniel's anger simmered. "Lucky?" His voice cracked, louder than he meant. Shadow growled softly in response, picking up his tension. "She was thrown out into a blizzard." Dr. Warren's eyes flicked nervously toward the door. "I don't doubt it, but there are limits to what I can put in writing. You understand?" "No," Daniel snapped. "I don't." Clara placed a hand on his arm. "It's not fear of paperwork," she whispered. "It's fear of crossing Hale. He's got half this town under his thumb." Daniel's fists clenched, the tendons in his scarred hands standing out white. He knew power like that, men who thrived on silence and fear. Warlords without uniforms. The girl's voice broke through, small and cracked. "Please don't send me back." Clara's throat tightened. She leaned close, brushing damp hair from the child's face. "We won't." "I promise." But even as she said it, her eyes betrayed doubt. Daniel caught it. Later that night, Daniel sat in the corner of a small hospital room. Shadow curled at his boots, the girl asleep in the bed. Snow tapped against the window like insistent fingers. The teddy bear lay clutched in her arms, threadbare but stubbornly whole. Daniel's mind drifted to the battlefield, the cries of children in bombed-out villages, the thunder of collapsing walls, the sight of a comrade holding a dying boy who had whispered, The same words, "Please don't send me back." He rubbed his temples, sweat breaking on his brow though the room was cold. A sudden bang in the hallway snapped him awake. Shadow's ears perked. Footsteps hurried past the door, followed by hushed voices. Daniel rose, moving silently to the window. Outside, through the curtain of snow, a black car idled under the hospital lights. The engine steamed, headlights off. Two men leaned against it, collars high, watching the building. Daniel's chest tightened. He'd seen eyes like that before, predators, waiting. Clara slipped into the room, shutting the door softly behind her. "They're here," she whispered. Daniel didn't ask who, he already knew. "They'll file for custody," Clara said urgently. "Victor Hale will claim her as his ward. With the paperwork, the benefits, the inheritance." Daniel cut her off, his voice low and sharp. "He's the one who left her to die." Clara's expression twisted. "Do you think the court will care? He's respected. He donates to the church. People owe him favors. This town—" She shook her head bitterly. It would rather stay quiet than confront him. The girl stirred in the bed, murmuring in her sleep. "Daddy's not dead." Daniel froze. He stepped closer, crouching beside her, his voice soft. "What did you say?" Her eyes fluttered open, dazed but insistent. She clutched the teddy bear tighter. "They said, Daddy's gone." "But I know. He's not dead. He promised he'd come back for me." The words cut through Daniel like a blade. Clara covered her mouth, shaken. The truth wasn't just abandonment. It was something deeper, darker. Shadow growled low, his eyes fixed on the window. The men outside hadn't left. The danger was closer than ever. Daniel rose, his decision made. If this town won't protect her, then I will. The storm outside intensified, wind rattling the panes as if warning of what was to come. And in the dim hospital room, the child's whisper lingered, heavier than the snow itself. "Daddy's not dead." The hospital corridors were eerily quiet that night, the kind of silence that never truly felt safe. Daniel sat rigid in the chair beside the girl's bed, his fingers unconsciously tracing the grooves of his old dog tags. Shadow slept lightly at his boots, but the twitch in his ears said he, too, was listening. The girl stirred, her voice breaking the stillness. "It's cold, even here." She burrowed deeper into the thin hospital blanket, clutching the teddy bear as though it could warm her. Daniel pulled his jacket off and gently draped it over her. "Better?" Her tiny nod came with a whisper. "Please don't let them find me." Daniel's throat tightened. "No one's taking you. Not while I'm breathing." Hours later, footsteps echoed down the hall. Daniel snapped awake. Shadow rose instantly, a low growl in his throat. Two uniformed officers entered, flanked by a man in a dark overcoat. "Evening, sir," one officer said stiffly. "We've been instructed to take custody of the child." "Legal guardian's orders." The man in the coat stepped forward, his smile tight, polished. "Mr. Hale sends his regards. The girl belongs with family." His eyes lingered on the child, cold and possessive. The girl woke, panic surging in her eyes. "No!" she cried, clutching Daniel's arm. Daniel stood, Shadow bristling beside him. His voice was gravel. "She's not leaving this room." The officer shifted uneasily. "Sir, please, don't make this harder." "We've got papers signed by the judge." Clara appeared suddenly, clutching a folder. "Those papers are fraudulent." Her voice shook, but she held her ground. "I filed an injunction this morning. The court hasn't approved anything." The man in the coat smirked. "Technicalities." "The child comes with us tonight." Shadow lunged, teeth bared, forcing the men back a step. Daniel's pulse roared. For a split second, the sterile hallway dissolved into a battlefield. He saw gunfire flashes, heard screams, smelled blood and smoke. His hands shook as the old nightmare overtook him. "Daniel!" Clara's voice snapped him back. "Stay with us!" He blinked hard, the war fading, the present crashing back into focus. The girl's tiny fingers dug into his sleeve, her terror real and immediate. Daniel straightened, steel in his voice. "You're not taking her. Not tonight, not ever." The confrontation drew staff from their posts, whispers rippling through the corridor. Some nurses looked away, unwilling to interfere. Others shifted nervously, caught between duty and fear. Dr. Warren appeared at the end of the hall. His face was pale, conflicted. For a moment, Daniel thought he might side with Hale's men, but instead, Warren raised his voice. "This child is in my care." "You'll have to go through me," the man in the coat's smile faltered. "Doctor, don't involve yourself in things bigger than you." But Warren didn't step aside. "She stays until morning." That's final. Daniel felt a surge of gratitude, though the doctor's eyes betrayed fear. Warren wasn't a hero, but tonight he chose not to stay silent. The men retreated slowly, muttering threats. Their silhouettes melted into the storm outside. After the danger passed, Clara exhaled shakily. That was only the beginning. Hale won't stop. He'll use every trick, legal or otherwise. "You need to be ready." Daniel rubbed his temples. "Ready? Lady, I've been ready my whole damn life." His tone was bitter, but his eyes softened when he looked at the girl. "She deserves better than this fight." The girl whispered. "He says Daddy's gone. But I know. He lies." Clara crouched beside her. "What makes you say that, sweetheart?" The child held up her teddy bear, fumbling with a tear in its seam. From inside, she pulled a folded piece of paper, yellowed and creased. Daniel froze as she handed it to him. It was a letter, written in hurried script. "If anything happens to me, protect her. Don't trust Hale." Daniel's chest constricted. The words were signed with a name he recognized from memorial walls, Captain Samuel Blake. Clara gasped. "Her father. He was in your unit, wasn't he?" Daniel's hand trembled. "Sam, he saved my life more times than I can count." The truth crashed over him. Hale wasn't just trying to control a child. He was erasing a soldier's legacy, stealing what belonged to her father. The girl's eyes brimmed with tears. "Daddy said he'd come back." "He promised." Daniel bent to her level, voice thick. "And until he does, I'll keep that promise for him." That night, Daniel stood outside the hospital, snow lashing against his face, Shadow pacing at his side. He scanned the shadows, every instinct on high alert. The black car was gone, but tire tracks cut through the fresh snow like scars. The war hadn't followed him home. It had been here all along, hidden in small-town silence. Behind him, in the warm glow of the hospital window, the child's silhouette clutched her teddy bear, watching him. And though the storm howled, he heard her voice, fragile yet defiant. "They told me I shouldn't exist." The words chilled him deeper than the snow ever could. By dawn, the storm had thinned to a bitter flurry, the kind of snow that needles the skin and scrapes the lungs clean. The hospital's windows glowed a tired amber, while the town around it kept its practiced hush. Blinds half-drawn, footsteps that paused at corners, doors that clicked shut when Shadow's silhouette appeared. Daniel felt the weight of that hush on his back as surely as the rifle strap. Clara arrived with a thermos and a file. Her cheeks were chapped, her eyes bloodshot, and the way she clutched the folder told Daniel the pages inside were heavier than paper. "I pulled her ER chart," she said, voice low. "Old entries." The school nurse flagged bruises last month and... She stopped herself, glancing to the bed. The girl slept, curled around her teddy bear, as if the bear were a wall against the world. "Those notes never made it to CPS. Someone intercepted." "Garvey," Daniel said. "Or the pastor," Clara added, shame flickering across her face. "Pastor Martin chairs the church charity that supports Hale's foster placements, donations, winter coats, rent subsidies. The paperwork makes him look like a saint. The money says something else." "Money always talks," Daniel murmured. "What's it saying here?" Clara opened the file to a photocopied ledger, neat lines of ink, dates, initials. Cash withdrawals the same days, new wards are registered to Hale, benefits skimmed, service contracts inflated, your friend Sam's death benefit, portions diverted. Daniel stared until the numbers blurred. Captain Samuel Blake. A laugh in dust, a hand on a shoulder in the worst minutes, a promise to get home. Daniel closed his eyes and saw Sam propped against a broken wall, whispering through blood, "Make sure my kid knows." The rest had drowned in the blast. Shadow nudged his knee. The dog's whiskers were iced from the door crack. He'd been breathing the outside like a warning. Daniel ruffled his ears, grounding himself in the living present. "We go public," he said. "We take this ledger to the sheriff's office, to the judge." Clara shook her head hard. "Garvey will burn it before the ink dries. We need more." A hard copy of Hale's private placements, the names. There was a rumor about a spare ledger out at the old trucking warehouse, the one by the grain silos. A book he keeps for the real numbers. She hesitated. "I heard it from Mrs. Lyle." "The neighbor?" Daniel remembered the lace curtains, the porch chair, always one rocking motion away from a confession. Clara swallowed. She said she didn't see anything the night the girl was thrown into the snow. Then she cried. Then she said she heard Hale on the phone, bragging about the book, and she said the warehouse door sticks in the cold. Clara exhaled. "If we get the book, we can freeze the court before Hale freezes us out." Shadow lifted his head, the low hum in his chest becoming a growl. Daniel followed his gaze to the hall window. A woman in a grey nurse's smock stood there, watching. When she realized they saw her, she turned away too quickly. Clara leaned in. "We need to move her. If Hale tries again, he won't come with officers. He'll come with a van." "Where?" Daniel asked. Clara looked down at the bear and the sleeping girl. "Somewhere noisy. Somewhere no one notices one more cry." "Truck stop," Daniel said. They left before the cafeteria coffee finished burning itself into daylight. Clara wrapped the girl in a wool coat from Lost and Found, then in Daniel's jacket. Shadow paced the length of the corridor like a metronome set to urgency. When they stepped into the cold, the town square pretended not to see them. The bell in the church tower struck 8 like an alibi. On the drive out, the girl sat between Daniel and Clara, tiny hands kneading the teddy bear's patched belly. Her gaze followed Shadow's head in the rearview mirror. "He doesn't blink," she whispered, more observation than fear. "He blinks when he trusts the room," Daniel said. "What makes a room trustworthy?" she asked, voice thin. "People who stay when doors slam," he said, and realized he was speaking to himself as much as to her. The truck stop rose out of the white like a ship run aground. Sodium lights buzzing, diesel coughs, men in heavy coats hunched over paper cups. Perfect anonymity, perfect ambush. They took a corner booth. Clara ordered oatmeal and hot chocolate, the way people used to order hope. Shadow lay under the table, his body a taut line from paws to withers. The girl cupped her hands around the heat like she could sip warmth through her fingers. Her eyes found a bulletin board by the door. Lost gloves, seasonal work, a flyer with a wavering tear-off line, free counseling, Pastor Martin. She flinched, and the cup rattled. "He told me to pray gratitude," she said, "for having a roof." Daniel's jaw clenched. "What did you pray for?" She touched the bear's frayed ear. "For a different roof." Clara's phone buzzed, a single text from a blocked number, warehouse, noon. "Bring the soldier, alone." Then, as if to prove time could still be a comedian, the clock above the grill hissed over to 11:19. "It's a trap," Daniel said. "It's a chance," Clara countered. "Mrs. Lyle knows we're desperate. So are the others. Some of them want out." She looked at the girl. "We get the book. We end it." Daniel scanned the room. A trucker in a beanie stared too long. A waitress overpoured coffee at their table, eyes sliding toward the door. The nurse in grey from the hospital sat at the counter, not eating, not leaving. Shadow's growl thrummed under the table. "We split," Daniel said. "Clara, you take her to a safe place." Clara's mouth twisted. "There is no safe place." "Then follow the only rule I trust," Daniel said. "Don't stop moving." He folded the girl's hands around the teddy bear, crouched until his eyes were level with hers. "I'll be back before the bear can blink, okay?" She stared at him like she could count the empty promises in a life. "People say that," she whispered. "And then they don't come." Shadow laid his wet nose on her knee like a signature. She pressed her palm to his head. "He blinks for me," she said softly. Daniel forced a smile that was really a vow. "I blink for you." They left through different doors. The warehouse squatted by the silos like something the town forgot to forgive. Corrugated skin, paint peeled into scars, a sign that said, closed in letters that thought they could keep anything out. The wind ran a hand along the metal and made a dull organ of it. Daniel parked behind a stack of pallets. Shadow leapt down, nose tasting the air, shoulders rolling into that quiet glide that meant work. The main door stuck exactly where Clara said it would. He shouldered it once, twice, and it surrendered with a shudder. Inside smelled of oil and old wheat. Tire marks curved to emptiness. A single desk sat under a naked bulb, its drawer half open like a mouth mid-confession. Behind it, a corkboard held invoices, routes, photographs of smiling church potlucks. Sanctuary pinned over smuggling. Shadow moved first. He trotted to a stack of filing boxes and sat, alert, tail thumping once. Daniel knelt and pried the top open. Inside, binders with dates, initials, government seal copies, and his stomach knotted, columns marked disbursement/diversion. He flipped until a name stopped him cold. Blake, S. A line bled into the margin. Minor ward registered, female. Next to it, in a different hand, delay notice. Pastor to coach narrative. Footsteps behind him. Daniel rose slowly. Sheriff Garvey stood in the doorway with a tired smile and a hand on his holster. Two deputies flanked him, and between them, Pastor Martin, collar crooked like pennants, practiced in the mirror. "Always knew you'd pick the wrong rooms, Cross," Garvey said. "War will do that." Scrambles a man's sense for exits. Daniel kept his hands open and away from the binders. Shadow didn't move. Only the tip of the dog's tail twitched, recording distances. "Where's Hale?" Daniel asked. The pastor answered instead, voice syruped with pity. "We tried to help her. There are resources, structures for children like her. But you filled her head with stories." He shook his head sadly, like grief could be performed into truth. "Your kind can't tell the difference between a mission and a mania." Garvey advanced. "Here's how this goes. You walk away, you pretend none of this exists, and you get to keep the dog." The girl goes back where she belongs. Daniel's vision spotted at the edges. Belongs echoed like a shell burst. The warehouse became a room in Afghanistan. The pastor's collar became a rag bandage on a bad man's wrist. Garvey's badge became a coin in a warlord's hand. His fingers flexed toward a rifle that wasn't on him. "Breathe," he heard, but it wasn't Clara. It wasn't even his voice. It was Shadow's body leaning into his shin, the weight of 1,000 drills, the warmth of a living thing anchoring him to a present that still had choices. From the side door, a new sound, a van's engine idling low, a door slide, a muffled cry. Daniel didn't know her voice. He knew its shape, small, defiant, outnumbered. He moved without thinking. The first deputy reached. Shadow hit him center mass, teeth holding sleeve, not flesh, dragging him 2 steps off balance. Daniel lunged at Garvey, striking wrist to gun, the weapon skittering under the desk. The pastor stumbled backward, knocking a box off its stack. Papers exploded into a snow of names. Garvey swung hard, catching Daniel above the eye. The world flashed white, then narrowed to a tunnel with one exit. The side door. Daniel drove a shoulder into Garvey's chest, heard air leave him in a sound like an apology never given, and ran. The loading bay held the van, its back doors yawning. A man inside jerked at Daniel's approach. Daniel slammed the door on his arm, heard a curse, pulled it open again. The cargo space was half full of boxes, and, pressed behind them, a small bundle of coat and trembling Clara. "They have her," she gasped, pointing past the van to the catwalk above. "They took—" A thin cry cut the air. Daniel looked up, pallets stacked to his height, a catwalk where a second deputy dragged the girl toward a side stair. Her teddy bear dangled from his back pocket, one button eye watching the room like a witness. Shadow tore into the bay, blood on his jowl that wasn't his. He vaulted the pallets like a training field, claws scraping metal, a blur of muscle and oath. The deputy turned, seeing the dog too late. The girl wrenched free, tripped, slid, small boots scrabbling for grip at the catwalk's edge. "Hold on!" Daniel shouted, the command voice he hadn't used since a day that broke him. Her hands found a slat. The deputy lunged. Shadow hit him at the knees, both tumbling into a net of tarps and rope. The catwalk shuddered. A chain snapped. The girl slipped. Daniel was already moving. He climbed without feeling his palms, vaulted without counting the cost, reached out over 13 feet of hard concrete and empty breath. Her eyes met his, brown, wide, a world of letdowns and one last ask. "Don't let me fall," she whispered, winded, the words so thin he might have imagined them. "I won't," he said, and for once the universe didn't argue. He caught her forearms and hauled, tendons screaming, old wounds lighting like flares. Below, Garvey roared. Above, the pastor prayed for a door that would forgive him. Papers fluttered in the draft like winter birds. Daniel pulled the girl over the rail and into his chest. She sobbed into his collar. He pressed his cheek to her hair and closed his eyes for the length of one heartbeat. Then a gun cocked. Victor Hale stepped from the shadow of the office window, face calm as a fresh signature. "You're late to the party, Sergeant," he said softly. "Put her down." Shadow turned, lips peeled back, a rumble born in his ribs. Daniel shifted, placing his body between Hale and the child. The warehouse lights hummed, snow dust danced in the draft. Somewhere, a chain creaked, a clock clicked toward whatever came next. The girl's lips brushed his ear, a ghost of a sound meant for him alone. "Daddy's not dead," she breathed. "He's here." Daniel's blood ran cold and hot at once. He didn't dare take his eyes off Hale, but he knew the sentence wasn't a fantasy. It was a fact about the room he hadn't yet learned. "Show me," he whispered, whether to the child, to his own stubborn heart, or to the day itself, he couldn't tell. The gun didn't waver. The warehouse air was so sharp with cold that each breath felt like swallowing knives. Daniel kept his stance tight. The girl clutched to his chest. Shadow crouched low at his side. Across the floor, Victor Hale leveled the pistol with the precision of someone who had rehearsed this moment in his mind many times. "Put her down," Hale repeated. His voice was steady, but the glint in his eyes betrayed a hunger that went deeper than greed. It was ownership, control, the thrill of holding life like a coin between two fingers. Daniel shook his head slowly. "She's not going back to you." Hale's mouth tightened. "You're too late, Cross. She was mine the moment the state signed the papers. You think a broken soldier and his mutt can stand against the law? Against me?" The girl trembled in Daniel's arms. Her tiny hand clutched at the tag on his dog tags, squeezing it like she could squeeze out the truth. Her whisper barely cracked the air. "Don't let go!" Daniel angled himself so the pistol's line of fire stayed centered on his chest instead of hers. His voice was steel ground on memory. "You'll have to put me down first." A door banged open. Clara stumbled in, hair disheveled, blood on her sleeve from a struggle. She froze at the sight, hands raised. "Victor, stop this. Everyone knows. The ledgers. Garvey can't cover it anymore." Hale sneered. "Garvey's loyalty lasts longer than your optimism." But Shadow's growl deepened, vibrating through the steel of the catwalk. The dog had locked eyes not on Hale, but on the shadows behind him. And then Daniel heard it, chains dragging, a cough, the scrape of boots. From a back office door, another figure staggered out, pale, gaunt, beard overgrown. Shackles clinked at his wrists. Daniel's heart slammed against his ribs. The shape was familiar in a way memory hadn't let go. The girl's whisper echoed like a bell. "Daddy's not dead!" "Sam!" Daniel's voice broke on the name. The man looked up, his eyes, tired but burning, locked with Daniel's. "Cross?" The gun in Hale's hand trembled for the first time. "He was supposed to be gone," Hale hissed. "That blast—" Sam Blake, captain, friend, brother-in-arms, took one unsteady step forward, shackles rattling. "You told them I was dead," he rasped. "Took my daughter, sold my life." The girl lifted her head from Daniel's shoulder. "Daddy!" Her voice cracked like ice splitting. Hale snapped, desperate. "Shut up! You were never meant to exist. You were leverage, nothing more." He swung the pistol toward Sam. Shadow launched. The K9 hit Hale's arm, jaws clamping the wrist, twisting the gun aside. The shot fired wild, ricocheting off steel beams, sparks showering the floor. Daniel shoved the girl into Clara's arms and barreled forward. Hale and Shadow rolled, the dog's growls shredding the silence. Hale kneed hard, breaking Shadow's grip, then swung the butt of the pistol down on the animal's flank. Shadow yelped but lunged again, teeth flashing. Daniel's world tilted red. He tore Hale off the dog, fists landing with years of battlefield rage. Hale slammed back into the filing boxes, papers exploding around them like snow. "Your war's over," Daniel hissed. Hale spat blood. "Not until she's mine." He wrenched the pistol back, aiming at the child in Clara's arms. Daniel froze. Time crawled. The muzzle stared black at innocence. Then Sam, chains rattling, threw himself between. The shot cracked. Sam grunted, dropping to one knee, blood blooming through the ragged shirt. The girl screamed. "Daddy!" Daniel ripped the pistol free, slamming Hale's arm against the steel frame until bone gave way with a sick snap. Hale collapsed, clutching his wrist, gasping in rage and pain. Shadow stood guard over him, lips curled, daring him to move. Clara was already on her knees beside Sam, pressing her hands against the wound. It missed the heart. "Hold still, don't talk." But Sam's gaze was fixed on his daughter. He lifted a shaking hand, fingers brushing her curls. "I waited," he whispered. "I thought I'd never hear your voice." Tears streaked her cheeks. "They told me I shouldn't exist." His voice, though thin, carried the steel of command Daniel remembered. "Don't ever believe them." "You are my reason I'm still breathing." Daniel crouched beside him, voice shaking. "We'll get you out. We'll fix this." Sam's eyes flicked to him, the ghost of a grin under the pain. "You always carried my six." He coughed. "Do it again." Daniel clasped his shoulder, pressing hard like he could anchor his friend to life. "Always." Outside, sirens began to wail, the sound of either rescue or cover-up. Clara looked up, panicked. "Garvey will be here first." Daniel stood, hefting the binders from the floor. "Then we end it before they rewrite the ending." He turned to Hale, who groaned under Shadow's watch. "You'll face every name in those pages," Daniel said, voice carved from granite. Hale spat. "The town will bury it." "They always do." Daniel glanced at the girl. She clutched her teddy bear to her chest, but her gaze was steady, fierce through the tears. "Not this time," Daniel said. "She won't let them." Shadow barked once, sharp, final, as if sealing the vow. Daniel hoisted Sam's arm over his shoulder, Clara supporting the other side. Together they staggered toward the door, toward the howl of sirens and the storm beyond. Behind them, Hale writhed, bound by Shadow's unyielding stare. The snow flurried in through the broken windows, covering the scattered ledgers, like nature itself was trying to preserve the truth. The girl whispered into Daniel's ear as they crossed into the cold, words carrying more weight than the storm. "Please don't let us go back." Daniel swallowed hard, tightening his grip on Sam and the binders both. "Not a chance." The wind roared, but under it Daniel heard the faint beat of hope, a rhythm he hadn't trusted in years. For the first time since war, he believed survival wasn't the only mission. Redemption was. The sirens didn't fade, they multiplied. Red and blue strobes painted the blizzard as cruisers converged on the warehouse. Daniel half-dragged, half-carried Sam through the snow, Clara cradling the girl against her chest. Shadows circled. Them, hackles raised, nose twitching at every engine growl in the white. "They're blocking both ends of the road," Clara gasped. "We'll never outrun them on foot." Daniel's eyes scanned the lot. A delivery truck sat idling, back doors half frozen open, exhaust coughing into the storm. "We're not outrunning them," he said. "We're outlasting them." He pushed Sam into the passenger seat, Clara and the girl into the back. Shadow leapt up last, shaking frost from his coat. Daniel slammed the door, twisted the ignition. The engine sputtered like it had one last breath but roared to life. Headlights cut through the storm, revealing cruisers closing in. Garvey's voice cracked over a loudspeaker. "Cross! You've gone too far. Hand over the child and no one gets hurt." Daniel's knuckles whitened on the wheel. "Heard that promise before." He floored it. The truck fishtailed onto the ice-packed road, tires screaming. Behind them, sirens gave chase. Clara shielded the girl, murmuring soothing nonsense words while Shadow braced, paws planted wide, growl low like an engine inside the cab. Sam groaned, one hand pressed to his side. Blood seeped through Clara's hasty bandage. "Don't! Stop!" he muttered. "If they take her back!" His voice trailed into a cough, but his eyes burned through the haze. Daniel's chest clenched. "I won't let them." The road bent along a frozen river. One wrong move, and the ice would swallow them whole. Garvey's cruiser pulled up alongside, passenger window rolling down. A deputy leaned out, rifle aimed. "Down!" Daniel barked. Shadow lunged across, his body covering Clara and the girl, just as a shot shattered the side mirror. Glass rained, sparkling like cruel snowflakes. Daniel jerked the wheel, slamming the truck into the cruiser's side. Metal screamed. The deputy tumbled back inside as the cruiser skidded into a drift. But another followed, lights slicing through the storm. The bridge loomed ahead, half collapsed from years of neglect, barricades warning drivers to turn back. Clara's voice was tight. We don't have a choice." Daniel downshifted. "Hold on." The truck rattled onto the bridge, planks groaning, ice cracking under the weight. The sirens dimmed behind them. The cruisers hesitated. For one blessed second, the only sound was the roar of the river beneath fractured ice. Then the bridge gave way. The truck lurched, back tires slipping through splintered boards. Daniel gunned the engine. The cab tilted skyward as the rear sank. Clara screamed, clutching the girl. Shadow barked, claws scraping for purchase. "Move!" Daniel shouted. Sam, weak but fierce, shoved the door open. "Go!" He staggered out onto the tilting planks, waving frantically. "Keep her safe, Cross!" Daniel's heart slammed. He couldn't leave him, not again. But Sam's eyes, blazing even through pain, left no room for argument. "Drive!" Daniel slammed the gear forward. The truck roared, pulling over the last stretch of boards just as the bridge collapsed behind them. The river swallowed wood and sirens alike. For a breathless moment, there was silence, only wind and the girl's tiny sobs. Then Clara's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, face blanching. A text. "Not over. She's mine until the papers burn." It's from Hale. He's still moving. Daniel clenched his jaw. "Then we keep moving too." They pulled off the main road into the woods, snow swallowing their tracks. The truck finally sputtered into silence, fuel gone. They abandoned it, trudging into the storm toward a hunter's cabin Daniel remembered from a long-ago patrol. Inside, the cabin smelled of cedar and dust, but it was shelter. A fire sputtered to life under Daniel's trembling hands. The girl sat curled by Shadow, both wrapped in a tattered blanket. Clara tended to Sam's wound with strips of cloth, though her face said she doubted it would hold. Daniel sat back, every muscle screaming. The girl reached for his sleeve, tugged. "Why do they want me?" Her voice was barely audible, but it cracked through him louder than any gunshot. Daniel swallowed. "Because you matter. Because you're proof of things they want buried." Her eyes filled, shimmering. "They said I shouldn't exist." Daniel's throat burned. He touched the tag she still clutched, pressing it into her palm. You exist. And you're the reason we fight? Shadow pressed his head against her knee, sealing the vow with silent loyalty. Outside, the wind howled like a warning that the night wasn't done. And deep down, Daniel knew the storm was only shifting, becoming fire, becoming courtroom, becoming every trial still ahead. But in the glow of the cabin, he saw it. A child, no longer entirely lost, a brother found in shackles, a war he could still win. Night dropped hard, thick as a blanket thrown over a struggling fire. The hunter's cabin creaked in the wind, seams in the old boards let the blizzard's hiss snake through. Daniel paced between stove and door in a tight loop that burned a track into the plank floor. Shadow shadowed him, every third step a slight hitch in his gait, bandage darkened, but holding. Clara dozed upright in a chair, a hand resting lightly over the girl's small shoulder. Sam lay on the cot nearest the stove, breath shallow but steadier than an hour before, eyes open to the rafters like a man inventorying the past. Tomorrow, Daniel said softly, more to the room than to anyone in it. We take the ledgers to the state office. We bypass Garvey, bypass the town. Clara's eyes opened. If we make it to morning, Sam managed a half smile. Optimism outruns the clock if you let it. He turned his head toward the little girl. Pumpkin, you warm enough? The child nodded, her small fingers finding the familiar seam in the teddy bear's belly, touching the hidden letter as if it could pulse like a living heart. She looked to Daniel. Will the snow hide us? It helps, he said. So will the truth. Shadow lifted his head. The soft rumble started in his chest before Daniel heard anything at all. Then there it was, a distant engine throttled low, another. Then silence. Then the wind carried the crisp click of a door. Daniel moved to the window and parted the curtain. Darkness thick, but a faint orange seam winked at the tree line. Not headlights, fire. Up, he said, voice gone to command. Now! Clara was already rolling blankets, tucking the teddy bear to the girl's chest. Sam pushed up on one elbow, teeth gritted, stubbornness doing what painkillers couldn't. Shadow trotted to the door, then to the girl, then back, herding, deciding. The first bottle smashed against the far wall, a dull thud, followed by the hiss snap of liquid licking dry wood. Fire raced up the knots like it had been waiting its whole life for permission. Smoke pushed under the rafters in a slow, hungry roll. Victor Hale's voice arrived next, muffled, confident, the kind of voice that had always been welcomed in small-town fundraisers and back pews. Come on out, Cross. You've got something that belongs to me. We all go home if you hand her over. Sam's face pinched. He never learned to leave a lie alone? Daniel shoved the table over, flipping it to form a low shield between stove and door. Clara, you take her out the back, to the ravine. Stay low, stay moving. If anyone comes at you, Shadow will... Shadow had already moved, front paws up on the door, nose raking the bottom seam, reading the air like a text. He dropped down, pressed his shoulder to Daniel's leg. We're two parts of one animal, the pressure said. Shadow will go with you, Daniel finished, though his body resisted the words. The dog flicked him a look, decide fast. Another bottle shattered, closer this time, fire kissing a window frame until the glass fogged, webbed, fell inward. The room breathed smoke. The girl coughed, tucked her face into Clara's coat. It hurts, she whispered. Daniel yanked a damp towel from the kettle and pressed it to her mouth and nose. Breathe through this. Like blowing out birthday candles, slow a third bottle hit the roof. In the glow, figures separated from the line of trees, 3, maybe 4. One was large enough to be Garvey, another held something long that could only be a rifle. The third moved with that familial ease of someone who believed the world owed him safe passage. Victor, Daniel said under his breath like a diagnosis. Clara squeezed the girl, eyes watering. We need an exit. Daniel kicked at the back door until the ancient latch gave. A gust stole half the smoke and replaced it with a slash of cold. Out. Stick to the creek bed and cut north. Clara hesitated. You're right behind you, he lied, because there are lies that save lives, and he had earned the right to choose one now. The little girl looked back over Clara's arm, eyes wide through the smoke. You'll blink for me? She asked, chest hitching. Every time, Daniel said. Go. They slipped into the night. Shadow took 2 steps after them, stopped, looked from the door to Daniel, torn. Outside, a rifle bolt slid into place, a sound like a slammed door in Daniel's skull. His vision narrowed, heat and sand and sirens converging. The stove's crack became mortar. The rafters' creak became incoming. His hands shook, sweat iced his spine. Breathe, Sam said from the cot, voice firm across the smoke. Cross, right here, in, out! Daniel locked eyes with his friend. In, out! The roar receded an inch, enough to move. He kicked the overturned table hard, sending it skidding toward the door. Sam, crawl, back door. Sam gritted his teeth and moved. Daniel grabbed the ledger's canvas bag, slung it crossbody. He was 5 steps from the exit when the front door blew inward under a boot. Victor entered behind the bloom of flame, rifleman at his shoulder, Garvey filling the doorway like a verdict. Hale smiled without moving his mouth. Evening, Sergeant. Warm in here, Daniel lifted his hands from his sides, palms open. Walk away, Victor. You've already lost, have I? Hale looked past him, toward the back door's new night. You sent the prize outside, into a circle I drew myself. He lowered his voice, a silk drawl. She was never meant to exist. The papers will correct that. By morning, Shadow stepped between Daniel and the rifles, shoulders square, head low. Hale's eyes flicked to the dog. Always the dog, he murmured. You know the law we follow here? Animals don't testify. Garvey shifted, impatience cracking the smooth. Do it! Hale raised his pistol. Shadow launched. The shot blew splinters out of the table, and then Shadow hit Hale mid-torso, teeth at the gun wrist, the 2 of them smashing into the doorframe in a spray of sparks and smoke. The rifleman fired. The round screamed past Daniel's ear and buried in a beam. Daniel dove, grabbed the rifle barrel, torqued it down, drove his shoulder into ribs. They slid across the floor, ash painting their faces grey. Another shot. A yelp, high, shocked, cut short. Shadow! Daniel's voice cracked raw. He tore the rifle free and hammered the butt into its owner's hand, sending the weapon skittering into the fire-lit corner. He spun, heart in his mouth. Shadow lay near the threshold, chest heaving, blood dark at the shoulder. Hale scrambled to his feet, pistol gone, eyes feral, arms slick with the dog's bite. For 1 suspended second all the fires paused, not dying, only holding their breath. Choose, Hale panted. Chase me or save him. Daniel's body made the choice before his mind could. He dropped to his knees at Shadow's side, pressing his hands into the fur, feeling the warm welling through his fingers. Stay with me, buddy, he whispered, forehead against the dog's. You don't go anywhere I can't follow. Shadow's eyes locked to his, clear, refusing pity. Move, they said. Finish it. Smoke thickened, the rafters popped. Through the back door, Clara's shout carried, Daniel! Garvey raised his service pistol, leveling it at Daniel's spine. Sam fired first. The old revolver, dusty from a drawer no one had opened in years, boomed like a door kicked off its hinges. Garvey jerked, staggered, pistol clattering to the planks. He folded with a sound like a sentence ending. Hale ran. Daniel surged up, scooped Shadow into his arms in one practiced motion of a man who had carried brothers out of worse places and bolted for the back. The night took them like a plunge into cold water. The cabin behind erupted fully, flame punching into the sky, sparks snowing over black pine. Clara crouched in the ravine with the girl tucked against her, both faces bright with firelight and fear. From the tree line, a figure moved, long coat, hunched determination, Hale, sprinting for the tracks. He glanced over his shoulder and saw the small shape in Clara's arms. His face changed, not to remorse, but to calculation. He pivoted toward them. Daniel had a heartbeat to aim and none to shoot. Shadow trembled in his arms, the child's head pressed under Clara's chin, Sam stumbling behind, empty gun in his hand. Then the little girl lifted her face into the wind and spoke, not loud, not dramatic, simply true enough to be heard above everything that lied. "Please don't let us go back." It hit Daniel like a bell, stripping everything unnecessary. The battlefield haze burned off. The man who flinched at doors slammed became the man who kicked them open. He set Shadow down gently in the snow. "Guard," he whispered. Shadow, shaking, planted himself over the girl and Clara, low and solid as a wall. Daniel stepped forward into the fire's glow, between Hale and the only thing that mattered. "It ends now." Hale lifted a stolen pistol from somewhere in that long coat and smiled a thin, tired smile, like a man finally arriving at the scene he'd rehearsed. "Yes," he said, "it does." Siren song rose far off, splintering the night. Snow hissed on the blaze. The ledgers dug into Daniel's ribs like a reminder that this wasn't just a fight. It was an affidavit written in pain. Hale's finger tightened. Sam stumbled beside Daniel, shoulder brushing his. Two men, forming the shape they'd been in another life, a last time. "I've got your 6, Sam rasped. "And I've got hers," Daniel said. The shot cracked. The crack of the gunshot split the night. Daniel braced for the punch of impact, but it wasn't his chest that burned. It was Hale's arm. The pistol spun from Victor's hand, clattering into the snow. Sam stood beside Daniel, revolver still smoking, body trembling with the effort of one last steady aim. Hale snarled, clutching his wrist. He tried to lunge again, but Shadow dragged himself forward, teeth bared, a bloodied wall of muscle and loyalty. Hale froze, staring into the dog's eyes. For the first time, the man who had manipulated judges, stolen children, and silenced a town looked small. Sirens closed in, real ones this time, not just Garvey's cronies. Blue lights swept across the tree line. Clara stepped from the ravine, holding the girl tight, her voice rising over the wind. "Over here!" "They have the ledgers." Deputies from the next county poured in, guns raised, not for Daniel, but for Hale. One barked orders, two pinned Victor in the snow. His protests, slick with the old arrogance, rang hollow against the evidence Daniel shoved into the sheriff's hands, binders, heavy with names, dates, signatures. Garvey lay unmoving in the cabin's wreckage. The flames had claimed his silence forever. Hours blurred into the hospital's white halls. Daniel sat on a bench outside the emergency ward, Shadow's head resting in his lap, thick bandages wrapped around the K9's shoulder. The dog's breathing was shallow but steady, each rise of his chest like an oath kept. Daniel's own hand shook, not from battle this time, but from the sheer relief of not having to bury his last comrade. Clara appeared, her coat smelling of smoke and snow. "Sam's stable," she said softly. "Bullet missed the lung. They're going to transfer him for long-term care, but he'll make it." She lowered her voice. "He asked if you'd watch her until he's strong enough. If he can't, he wants you to keep her safe." Daniel's throat closed. He looked through the glass at the girl asleep in a hospital cot, the teddy bear tucked under her arm, the tag pressed in her hand like a lifeline. "She's already mine," he whispered. The courtroom came weeks later, but it was the same winter, the same hush of a town finally forced to listen. Snow lined the courthouse steps like an audience. Inside, the judge's gavel cut through whispers. Victor Hale sat shackled, face pale, every ounce of swagger gone. His attorney stammered, waving half-shredded defenses. But the ledgers spoke louder than any witness, Clara testified, voice unwavering. Sam appeared, still weak but alive, telling the court how his death had been forged, his daughter stolen. And then the girl was called. She walked forward, small legs shaking, teddy bear clutched. Daniel wanted to rise, to carry her, but Clara touched his arm, let her stand. The judge leaned gently. "Sweetheart, do you know why you're here?" The girl's voice was small but clear. Because they said I shouldn't exist. She lifted the bear. But I do. And I want to stay. With them. Her eyes found Daniel, then Shadow, lying at his feet. They don't let me go back. The silence that followed was holy. The gavel fell, custody granted, Victor sentenced. Spring thawed the town months later. The snow retreated into the mountains, leaving behind soft ground and the first green shoots of forgiveness. Daniel's cabin was different now, not just his, theirs. A photo hung above the mantel, Sam smiling with his daughter in his lap, Daniel and Clara beside them, Shadow sprawled across their feet like a foundation stone. That evening, Clara lit a lantern. Sam, still healing but strong enough to walk, helped his daughter lift it. The flame flickered against the glass before they released it into the sky. It rose, slow and steady, until it joined a scatter of stars. The girl slipped her hand into Daniel's. Her voice was hushed, reverent, but it carried across every silence that had once buried her. "I'm not lost anymore," she said. Daniel squeezed her hand, his eyes stinging. Shadow pressed close, sighing deep, as if to say, "Mission complete." The lantern drifted higher, a point of light refusing to burn out. Behind them, the town gathered, not to gossip, not to turn away, but to stand witness. Neighbors who once kept curtains drawn now bowed their heads. The pastor resigned. The silence broke. Daniel watched the girl's eyes follow the lantern into the dark. For the first time in years, he felt something bloom in the scarred soil of his chest, not the shaky hope of survival, but the rooted strength of family. He bent low, whispering so only she could hear. "This is home now." She leaned into him, the teddy bear pressed between them, her final whisper sealing it. "And I exist." Closing note, sacrifice, loyalty, unconditional love, second chances. The war had not ended on a battlefield but in a courtroom, a fire, a child's whisper. And healing came not by erasing the past, but by building a future together.